The time is precisely 6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Dilini Kunawardana and read by Rumesh Perez. The headlines. President Ranil Wickremesinghe to address the nation today. Sri Lanka reaches the final debt restructuring agreement with creditors. The CPC refinery is to become a separate government-owned entity under restructuring plan. The foreign minister to visit Japan in July. Plans afoot to establish a separate university for education, consolidating the national colleges of education. In foreign news, NATO announces its next chief. In sports, women's cricket scheduled announced for Women's T20 Asia Cup in Sri Lanka. Now the local news in detail. Sri Lanka reached a final restructuring agreement for $5.8 billion of debt with its bilateral lenders' official creditor committee in Paris, France, today. This agreement with bilateral lenders not only grants significant debt relief, but also allows Sri Lanka to allocate funds to essential public services and secure concessional financing for its development needs. Meanwhile, taking to X, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga announced that the final agreement was reached on debt restructuring between Sri Lanka and the Official Credit Committee on the sidelines of the Paris Forum 2024 in France. The State Minister further said that Sri Lanka is in the process of signing bilateral debt treatment agreements between Sri Lanka and the Export-Import Bank of China. The lawmaker also reiterated that the unwavering commitment and leadership of President Ranil Wickremesinghe has been instrumental in steering Sri Lanka towards this milestone achievement. Minister Kanchana Wijesekara says a discussion on the timeline and process for implementing the reforms pertaining to the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, or the CPC, took place yesterday with the senior management of the CPC and the refinery. In a post on X, he said that under the restructuring plan, the CPC-owned refinery will be set up as a separate government-owned and operated entity to attract and raise investments with the aim of improving fuel quality, efficiency, capacity, and reducing costs. The restructuring plan includes revising the current approved cadre and salary structure of the CPC, while digital platforms will be introduced for multiple functions and services. Foreign Minister Ali Sabri is scheduled to undertake an official visit to Japan from the 1st of July. According to the Foreign Ministry, the visit is being made on an invitation extended by Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa. During this visit, Minister Sabri will engage in bilateral discussions with his Japanese counterpart that will focus on making further progress on the outcome of the Japanese Foreign Minister's official visit to Sri Lanka last month. Foreign Minister Sabri will also call on several other dignitaries, including the Chief Cabinet Secretary of Japan, Yoshimasa Hayashi. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with more local news. Minister Dr. Susil Premejayanta said that plans are underway to establish a separate university for education, consolidating the national colleges of education in the island. The government has already taken a policy decision regarding this matter. The draft bill in this regard has been submitted for the approval of the Attorney General. Once the approval is granted, the bill will be submitted to the Parliament. Accordingly, the graduates from this university will join the teaching service after 2028. The High Commissioner of Sri Lanka of Singapore, Senarat Dissanayake, met with the Chief FinTech Officer of the Monetary Authority of Singapore and his team recently at the Monetary Authority of Singapore. The High Commissioner highlighted the significance of this visit as the Digicon Global Investment Summit 2024 unveils Sri Lanka's roadmap for tech-driven progress, exploring opportunities in cutting-edge fields alongside Sri Lanka's commitment to sustainability and inclusivity. The High Commissioner also briefed the team on the program that was arranged by the High Commission during their stay in Sri Lanka. The key objective of the delegation is to explore opportunities for cross-border collaboration with the government of Sri Lanka and the academia to promote fintech in the digital economy and advocate digital literacy, digital empowerment and financial inclusivity. And that concludes local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Vedamahatmya.
And moving on to the main news story, President Ranil Wickremesinghe is scheduled to address the nation today. The Department of Government Information stated that a special statement is to be made by the President at 8 p.m. The address will be telecast live through all government media channels. In his address, the President will brief the public on the current economic situation in the country and provide an update on the progress made with the restructuring of foreign debt. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Paveda.
In Watchlight this evening, Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team, or CERT, has warned the public to remain cautious of financial fraud via SMS and social media targeting festive seasons. According to CERT, these scams promise donations, cash gifts, lucky draws and job insurance using the names of legitimate entities. Despite extensive awareness programs launched, the number of complaints are increasing continuously due to the ignorance and negligence of the victims. Issuing a statement, CERT urged the public to be mindful of fake messages purportedly sent by various banks, commercial institutions and international organizations. The public is also requested to refrain from opening or responding to unverifiable messages. And that came to you in Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Moving on to the bulletin of World News. First, the headlines. NATO announces its next chief. Protesters promise more rallies amidst turmoil in Kenya. Julian Assange lands in Australia after leaving court a free man. Now the World News in detail. Transatlantic Military Alliance NATO has appointed Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte as its next chief, entrusting him with the leadership role during a critical time for European security amid Russia's war in Ukraine. Rutte's appointment today was a formality after his only rival for the post, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, announced last week that he had quit the race, having failed to gain traction. Ambassadors from the alliance's 32 members took the decision at a meeting at the NATO headquarters in Brussels. He will take over from Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on the 1st of October. Kenyan protesters vowed today to keep up their demonstrations against new tax hikes a day after police opened fire on crowds trying to storm Parliament, leaving at least 8 people dead and scores wounded. As heavily armed officers patrolled the streets of the capital Nairobi, supporters of the week-old protest movement took to X using the hashtag See You on Thursday in a mix of Swahili and English. Kenya's Medical Association says at least 13 people were killed on Tuesday, while a hospital official said 160 wounded are currently being treated. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has landed in Australia after walking free from a US court. He hugged his wife and father at the airport as a small group of supporters cheered his arrival. He pleaded guilty to one charge in the court in the Northern Mariana Islands on Wednesday, bringing a years-long case to an end. Assange was pursued by US prosecutors for publishing secret military information and feared a long sentence in a high-security US prison. Last week, he signed a deal with the US that would see him plead guilty to one charge instead of the 18 he was originally facing. Assange left the UK on Monday after spending 5 years in prison fighting extradition to the US. Back to the headlines of the World News. NATO announces its next chief. Protesters promise more rallies amidst turmoil in Kenya. And Julian Assange lands in Australia after leaving court a free man. And that concludes World News.
Development News.
In Development News, Sri Lanka's textile and apparel industry has showcased the country as a sourcing destination at an exhibition in the United Kingdom. The primary goal of Sri Lanka's participation in the exhibition is to discover new buyers and provide a boost to the country's apparel export sector, aiming to increase apparel exports to the United Kingdom by $1 billion in 2026. Sri Lanka unveiled its Your Vital Island brand to reaffirm its dedication to meet global standards while preserving its distinctive identity. 40 Sri Lankan exhibitors represented apparel, textile and accessory industries participated at the event held at the Royal Horticultural Hall in London. And that was Development News.
Moving on with Sports News.
And in sports, the Asian Cricket Council has unveiled the schedule for the upcoming Women's T20 Asia Cup, set to commence on the 19th July at the Dambulla International Cricket Stadium in Sri Lanka. Defending champions Sri Lanka will begin their title defence against Bangladesh on 20th of July, while UAE and Nepal will kick off the tournament in the opener. 8 top teams from Asia will compete in 2 groups. Group A includes Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Thailand and Malaysia, while Group B features India, Pakistan, UAE and Nepal. The top 2 teams from each group will advance in the semi-finals, leading up to the final on the 28th of July. India holds the record with 7 titles in the competition's history. And that was Sports News.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු ගීත හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න
The all new NSB Ithru Mithru account NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In business news, Ashok Garments Private Limited, a leading manufacturer and exporter of superior industrial uniforms, has been recognized with the BWIO Excellence Award in the garment textile industry of the large platinum category at Business World International Awards 2023. The award ceremony was held at the Taj Samudra Hotel recently. And that was business news.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු ගීත හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න
The all new NSB Ithru Mithru account NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
And moving on to economic news, Chongqing Airlines, an airline based in Chongqing, China, resumed direct non-stop flights from Chongqing to Colombo on Monday. The inaugural flight from Chongqing to Colombo was welcomed with a celebratory water cannon salute upon arrival at the BIA. Further, passengers were warmly welcomed by a traditional Kandyan dance performance sponsored by the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau and was presented with the Best in the World Tea Gift Packs, sponsored by the Sri Lanka Tea Board. And that was economic news.
Weather report.
And finally, we move on to the weather report. Showers will occur at times in the western, Sabaragamu and northwestern provinces and in the Kandy, Nuwara Eliya, Galle and Matara districts. Fairly heavy showers, about 50 millimeters, are likely at some places in the Sabaragamu province and in the Kandy and Nuwara Eliya districts. Several spells of showers may occur in the Matale and Hambantota districts. Showers or thunder showers may occur at few places in the Uva province and in the Ampara and Batiklo districts in the evening or at night. Strong winds of about 40 to 50 kilometers per hour can be expected at times over the western slopes of the central hills, northern, north-central and northwestern provinces and in the Trincomalee, Hambantota and Monaragala districts. And that was the weather report. And now to conclude this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. President Ranil Wickremesinghe to address the nation today. Sri Lanka reaches the final debt-free structuring agreement with creditors. The CPC refinery is to become a separate government-owned entity under restructuring plan. The foreign minister to visit Japan in July. Plans afoot to establish a separate university for education, consolidating the national colleges of education. In foreign news, NATO announces its next chief. In sports, women's cricket schedule announced for Women's T20 Asia Cup in Sri Lanka. And with that, we conclude this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.